Today's story: Terror in Paradise. Jeremy adjusted his backpack and exhaled, taking in the untouched wilderness around him. Towering emerald trees stretched endlessly in every direction, their thick canopies filtering the golden light of the late afternoon. The air smelled of damp earth and distant rain, alive with the chatter of unseen birds and the occasional rustling of small mammals. "Unreal," he murmured, shaking his head in admiration. Samantha grinned beside him, tucking a loose strand of hair beneath her baseball cap. "See, told you this would be worth it," he chuckled. 3 months of beaches and fancy hotels, and you still want to rough it in the middle of nowhere. "It's an adventure," she nudged him playfully. "You'll thank me when we find something incredible." Jeremy rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his smile. He loved that about her. Always chasing the next thrill. Always believing there was something amazing just waiting beyond the horizon. It was why they had taken this trip in the first place. A honeymoon that defied expectations. No crowded resorts or guided tours. Just them, the wild, and whatever secrets it held. And deep in the South American jungle, it certainly felt like there were secrets. The path beneath their boots had long since disappeared. But neither of them was worried. They had a compass, a satellite phone, and enough survival gear to last weeks if necessary. Still, something about this particular part of the forest felt different. The trees were older, their trunks gnarled and twisted as if they had grown in agony. The air carried a strange pressure, an almost constant hum that Jeremy felt more than heard. He glanced at Samantha, who had slowed her steps. "You feel that?" he asked. She nodded, swallowing. "Yeah, like the air's vibrating." They pressed on, their excitement laced with unease. Then ahead in the dense foliage, something glowed. They exchanged glances before stepping forward, drawn to the anomaly like moths to a flame. Pushing through the thick underbrush, they emerged into a small clearing and stopped. At the center of the clearing, half buried in the earth, was an object unlike anything they had ever seen. It was massive, at least 10 feet tall in diameter, a smooth metallic pod with no visible seams or markings. Its surface shimmered with a strange, liquid-like quality, reflecting the surroundings in distorted ripples. It pulsed faintly, a rhythmic glow like the slow breathing of some slumbering creature. Samantha inhaled sharply. "What the heck is that?" Jeremy stepped closer, his heart hammering. He reached out hesitantly, fingers hovering just above the surface. The air around it was cold, unnatural, so stealing the warmth from his skin. The moment his fingertips made contact, a deep hum resonated from within the pod. The ground trembled beneath them. Then it opened. The metallic surface split apart with an organic, wet sound, revealing a swirling void of absolute darkness inside. A gust of frigid air rushed out, carried with it whispers in no language spoken by man. Jeremy tried to pull back, but an invisible force seized them. The forest vanished. The horror began as Jeremy woke the silence. He wasn't in the jungle anymore. He was inside something vast, something alive. The walls around him pulsed with a sickly blue glow, their surfaces smooth yet breathing, like the inside of some colossal beast. The air was thick, damp, and wrong, filled with a nauseating sweet scent that turned his stomach. Samantha was beside him, still unconscious, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. A shadow moved. Jeremy turned his head and breath caught in his throat. Towering figures surrounded them, skeletal beings with translucent, gelatinous skin stretched tight over their tiny frames. Their faces were featureless, except for massive, swirling eyes, shifting with unnatural color. Their fingers, long and clawed, hovered just above his chest. A terrible realization settled in his gut. They weren't inspecting him. They were feeding. A sharp, searing pain erupted into his core. It was unlike anything he had ever felt. Not just agony, but a sensation of something being pulled from within him. His thoughts fragmented, his memories flickered, his very essence unraveled like a thread being ripped from fabric. He felt them drinking his soul. Samantha convulsed beside him, her eyes snapping open in terror. She reached for him, her mouth opening in a silent scream. But even as their fingers brushed, he could feel her vanishing. Her skin sagged, her golden hair dulled, thin, then withered into brittle white strands. Deep wrinkles carved through her youthful face, her muscles shriveling as her body aged decades in seconds. Jeremy tried to fight, to scream, to move, but he was changing too. His flesh loosened, his joints stiffened, his bones ached as if crushed beneath centuries of time. He looked down at his hands, no longer the hands of a man in his early 30s, but of something old, decrepit, and hollowed out. The aliens withdrew, their glowing eyes dimming with disinterest. They had taken what they needed. A blinding flash, and they were back. Jeremy collapsed onto the damp earth of the jungle, the humid air suffocating after the sterile cold of the ship. Samantha lay beside him, barely breathing. The pod was gone. The world around them buzzed with life. Birds chirped, insects skittered, leaves rustled in the breeze. But Jeremy knew it no longer mattered. They weren't part of this world anymore. They were husks, hollowed out shells of what they used to be, aged over 100 years. Samantha let out a weak sob, her frail fingers clutching at the dirt. Jeremy tried to speak, but all that came out was a dry rasp as their bodies crumbled into ash.